Hello, I am Mayuri Samanta, and today is second day of Zoom Marathon Challenge Season 3. And today my topic is recursion, a process in which a function calls itself directly or indirectly is known as recursion, and the corresponding function is known as recursive function. Now, basically, a recursion can be solved by calling a copy of itself with different inputs, with different inputs, so that and each time we try smaller value, so that smaller value of the original problem, so that it's become easier to solve. Now if we now in the recursive function, in the recursion, whenever we call a function of itself, then in the memory one activation call will be inserted. Now we should know when to stop this activation call. So for that, a base case is required in every recursive function. So base case, when it becomes true, then it will stop calling itself with the different inputs. We can say that because in memory, if we don't provide any base case, or we wrongly provide any base case, then this activation call will be inserted into the stack in the memory continuously. An infinite loop will be created, and the stack overflow error will be thrown by the JVM. So it is required that we use the base case properly in the recursive function. So basically we can say there are three properties of recursion. First is in recursion we call the function call itself with different numerical values, or different values you can say. Second is each time we try to input smaller inputs, so that to make it easier. And in third, a base case is required to terminate the recursive calls. Now as we know, any problem which is solved using recursion can easily be solved using iteration, or you can say loops also. So I will tell about the difference between recursion and iteration. So in recursion, it stops when the base case becomes true. In the recursive function will stop pushing the activation calls in the stack when the base case become true. But in iteration, it will stop when the condition becomes failed. In recursion, extra memory is required because the stack is created in the memory, but in iteration, there is no require for extra memory. In recursion, the code is comparatively smaller because we are trying to solve the problem with the smaller values each time. And in iteration, the code is comparatively larger. In recursion, the code is a little difficult to learn, or you can say little practice is required to write such kind of code. While in iteration, it is quite easy as compared to recursion to write a code and understand it properly. Now I will say about the advantages and disadvantages of using recursion. So in recursion, extra memory is required. That is the major disadvantage of it. And sometimes when we use recursion, then time complexity becomes exponential, which requires a lot of time for computing the recursion, computing that recursive function. While in iteration, it is less, the memory is not required, as we have already discussed. So in recursion, extra memory is required, and time also require more. And sometimes it is possible that memory exception can occur if we don't write the base case properly. Now, advantages of recursion is now our code becomes smaller and easy, smaller, and we can end some of the problems like iterating a tree. So inherently, we use recursion for that because it is easy. It is easier to iterate a tree using recursion. So in that case, recursion is very helpful. Some of the problems that are famous in recursion will be Fibonacci series, factorial problems, iteration over the trees, etc. Thank you.